Have you ever wondered why a certain NBA player fell off for seemingly no reason at all?
Phoenix is at 5 straight threes, 2-for-1 opportunity here for the Suns. Lazy pass from Nurkic.
We thought this was the case early in the 2024-25 season with Tyrese Halliburton, where he went from a potential All-NBA player, one of the NBA's best rising young point guards, to completely passive and ineffective. But as the season progressed, Halliburton bounced back, and as he recovered from injury, it was clear his speed and lateral quickness was steadily returning to where it was in years past. For other folks, however, as the end of the season approaches, these players unfortunately did not bounce back, and it feels like they completely fell off out of nowhere. But why? In this video, let's take a look at 5 of these players who randomly fell off for no good reason at all. Why was this their fate? Jusuf Nurkic. Arriving to Phoenix as a major part of the DeAndre Ayton trade, there were high hopes for the big Bosnian to contribute right away. On a team with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, there were immediate championship aspirations, and Nurkic got thrown into the fire. In his first year there, however, he proved to be a very valuable asset. He started in 76 games that year, the most of anyone on the roster. He put up solid stats and anchored the paint, leading them to become a very respectable defensive team, despite not having many good defenders on the roster. Nurkic provided a level of toughness and physicality that Ayton never did. In fact, Ayton was heavily criticized for being soft. While the Suns got knocked out early in the playoffs, there was no question in anyone's mind that Nurkic would still be the team's starting center. But then, the 2024-25 season commenced.
Goals. Booker catch, fire would not. Nurkic trying to save it and threw it out of bounds. Jones. Nurkic lines it up. No Grayson Allen tonight for Phoenix off the bench as Phoenix turns it over again.
Nurkic came out of the gates looking like he forgot how to play basketball. In his first 12 games, he shot 38% from the field. For a 7-foot, near 300-pound center, what the hell is he doing? Now, folks believed he'd bounce back eventually, right? This was just a slow start, and he was bound to recover. He needs to, there's no way he's this bad. Except, as the season chugged along, Nurkic did not bounce back. About a month before the trade deadline, he lost his starting spot to Mason Plumlee, of all people, and then proceeded to rack up the DNPs for 18 straight games. Nurk's drop-off into irrelevance is quite the interesting development. He was the 4th highest paid player on the Phoenix Suns, and while his initial acquisition was hopeful, he's had the most tumultuous year in his NBA career, with suspensions, getting benched, all the trade rumors. Reporters would always ask him if there's something wrong, and after all the DNPs, he was asked, was his relationship with Mike Budenholzer still good? To which Nurkic staunchly responded, "We don't have a relationship." I'm sure the Suns fanbase has a love or hate relationship with DeAndre Ayton, but there's no doubt he's been more productive on the Blazers than Nurkic has been on the Suns. On February 6, 2025, the Suns traded him to the Charlotte Hornets. They even had to attach a first-round pick in the deal to get rid of Nurk's contract, which is kind of funny. It just shows how much his value plummeted in such a short time. With his arrival to Charlotte, Nurkic is now stuck in basketball purgatory. Bam Adebayo. Earlier in the season, I made a video about the NBA's strangest stars, and in that video, I included Bam Adebayo. I mentioned how he was having quite the strange season, as he saw his game tread further and further away from the basket, going from a player who shot over half his shots in the restricted area when he first came into the league, to a player who has expanded his game outside the paint, but not to the point where he's good enough to keep doing it. As a result, Bam Adebayo's 2024-25 campaign has been the biggest drop-off he's ever seen in his NBA career. He's taken more three-pointers than his previous 7 seasons combined, and his willingness to step out and take long jumpers has been a huge hindrance to the Miami Heat.
During their playoff run that ended with a loss to the Lakers. Adebayo on the outside.
I feel like he deserves a spot in this video because initially we thought his regression would be short-lived and it was just, the early season jitters or something. But it looks like it's here to stay. With the Miami Heat transitioning into a more pace and space offense, now led by Tyler Hero as opposed to Jimmy Butler, Bam was asked to work on his three-point shots, an area of his game that was previously non-existent. Unfortunately, it's very hard to go from a non-existent three-point shooter to a good one. Very few can replicate what Brook Lopez was able to do. Bam is also trying to create more shots for himself, an area that he also struggled to do for his entire career. So you can't expect him to do this immediately. Historically, he's always been best when rolling to the basket or making passes from the top of the key. He's not good at creating his own shots off the dribble or shooting threes, yet he's being rushed to develop too quickly and do too much. Spoelstra even admitted, quote, "All of that is good for our team. We didn't get to do that enough, clearly. We didn't get to it enough with Bam." It's no surprise his game has fallen off, but despite his struggles offensively, he's still contributing in every other aspect of the game, and that's why Bam will still be a staple of this franchise for years to come. Serge Ibaka. I watched a lot of basketball throughout the course of the decade of the 2010s. So many regular season games, almost every playoff game. And in my mind, when I think of the most impactful role players of that era, I think of Serge Ibaka. For 7 years in OKC, he was incredibly important to the team's success. And while he was never a star, he always supported his stars.
Kicks it out, Ibaka on the drive, and scores! Wow. He's hit 4 for 4.
He's a guy who can fit on any roster and complement any star player due to his capabilities off the ball, his shooting, and his great rim protection.
Pass. Contested. Another denial.
He's on the high right.
Get that garbage out of here.
Even in his later years in Toronto, he became a pivotal piece in their first ever run to the championship, proving once again he's a great fit alongside any superstar. But then, something changed. When the Milwaukee Bucks acquired him at the 2022 trade deadline, he wasn't too far removed from his productive days, and the Bucks expected him to be a lethal threat alongside Giannis. Coming off a season where they just won the championship, acquiring Ibaka was supposed to shore up their spacing, and theoretically, he should be a great piece next to Giannis. Immediately upon his arrival, unfortunately, Ibaka's entire game disappeared. According to Ibaka himself, the Bucks really wanted him in the beginning, but soon he quickly found out he wasn't wanted. Quote, "When I go talk to the front office, they tell me different things. They love me, the front office. They want me to be here, they want me to stay. And when I go back on the court, it's different. It got to some point where I was like, I cannot take this anymore." While Ibaka desperately yearned for more playing time in Milwaukee, the reality was his production on the floor was very sporadic. His athleticism was no longer there and his defense fell off drastically, probably due to years of injuries that piled up over time. For a player who was such a valuable contributor on the Raptors not too long ago, his career would end on the Milwaukee Bucks. At the age of 33, he played his final NBA game, and afterwards, no other team picked him up. That was it. Montrezl Harrell. Montrezl Harrell's journey to the NBA was anything but handed to him. As a second-round pick, as an undersized 6'7" center, Harrell got drafted to a Rockets team in the middle of their heyday. A team lusting for a title, but had no need for a player of his skill set. When he arrived to Los Angeles a few years later, however, Harrell made the most remarkable jump. In the span of a single offseason, with more minutes on a star-studded Clippers roster, Harrell became a perennial Sixth Man of the Year candidate.
High 80s, high 20s. The lob, the jam! Here come the Clippers!
Led by him and Lou Williams, the Clippers' mob of bench players formed the highest-scoring, most dynamic bench squad in the entire league. In the 2019-20 season, Harrell was awarded the Sixth Man of the Year trophy, averaging nearly 19 points per game off the bench on ridiculous efficiency. Now, on paper, Harrell's skill set should not work. Let me remind you, he's a 6'7" center who scores off of spin moves, drives, and pure hustle. He was horrible at shooting, he was horrible at defending. In theory, there was no way this guy should have been this good. But on the Clippers, his weaknesses were covered. And coming off the bench, he was mostly facing other bench guys who simply could not guard his combination of size and handles. So, he feasted. Over time, however, the weaknesses of his game got exposed, especially in the playoffs. In the same year he won 6th Man of the Year, he also saw himself getting much lower playing time in the playoffs. And it's because opponents relentlessly attacked his flaws. They can leave him open pretty much anywhere outside the paint, and they attacked him on defense due to his lack of defensive IQ. He was an atrocious pick-and-roll defender. This happened with the Clippers. It also happened when he joined the Lakers a year later, where his playoff minutes were less than half of his regular season minutes, including racking up 2 DNPs, which coincidentally were the only 2 playoff games the Lakers won against the Suns. It's not a coincidence. Despite Harrell's offensive repertoire, his flaws always, and I mean always, get exposed when it matters most. Several trades later, by the time he joined the Sixers, his minutes were a fraction of what they once were, as everyone realized he's not as good as they thought he was. The final nail in the coffin came in the summer of 2023. During the Sixers training camp, he tore his ACL. With his career already going on a downward spiral, this was the absolute worst thing that could have happened, and his NBA career never recovered. He was forced to move overseas. Jeremy Grant. In the 2020 offseason, Jeremy Grant had a decision to make in free agency. He just had a great year with the Denver Nuggets. With his high-flying, hyper-athletic skill set along with a good three-point shot, he fits so well alongside Jokic. And so the Nuggets seriously wanted to keep him. The Pistons came swooping in and offered him a 3-year, $60 million deal. The Nuggets matched that offer. But Grant ultimately chose to go to Detroit, citing his ambitions for a bigger role, and reportedly, he also wanted to play for a team with a black coach, a black GM, and a predominantly black city like Detroit. Basically, the Pistons were everything he was looking for, including his desire for a bigger role. And it worked. Right out the gates, Grant went from a blossoming role player into a perennial 20-point-per-game scorer. Nobody thought he had the ability to score like this, to be the primary option on a team, because frankly, he never showed he was capable of doing this before. Regrettably, Grant's choice to leave Denver would also mark the last time he was relevant in the NBA. He hasn't made the playoffs since leaving Denver, playing for teams that were simply horrendous, probably because he was the leading scorer. I mean, it's kind of obvious. If Jeremy Grant is your first option, your team is probably tanking. With all that being said, he was still quite productive despite all the losing. That would soon change. Grant went from one of the team's primary scorers to unequivocally the worst player in the Blazers starting lineup. This is a team that surprisingly exceeded expectations and went from straight-up tanking to trying to make a late-season playoff push. Grant, however, has not been a part of their success. In fact, he's actively hindering the team's success and stunting the growth of their young players. He went from averaging 20-plus points a game to 14, with his efficiency going down the gutter. Yet, he still takes the third most shots on the team. The Blazers have become more of an ensemble cast of young players over the years, and maybe Grant is not used to being a role player anymore. For 5 years, he was the leading man and taking most of the possessions for himself, but now trying to play off the ball is hard for him to get used to again. Considering his teams were never good when he had the ball, perhaps it's a good thing for the Blazers to slowly inch away from Grant as a primary focus. The future of this team lies in the hands of their youngsters, not him. Sadly, his ludicrous 5-year, $160 million deal he signed, that might go down as one of the worst deals in the history of the franchise. I mean, the Blazers willingly gave him this contract, and now it's definitely among the top 5 worst contracts in the current NBA. And that's all, folks. Thank you all so much for watching, and let me know your thoughts in the comment section about these 5 players. What do you think is the real reason for their production to plummet in just the span of a single offseason? And for the players who fell out of the NBA, like Montrezl Harrell or even Serge Ibaka, do you think they'll ever make an NBA comeback, or is it too late? I hope y'all enjoyed the video, thank y'all so much for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.